Hi, I'm Jacob and I'm the Mancunian's Investigations Editor.
Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm the Union Affairs Officer here at the Students' Union and I'm in my second year in the role.
So the first question that we're asking all the executive officers this year, obviously you're in your second term, what are your current priorities as Union Affairs Officer and what are you doing to achieve them?
So I think when I campaigned for a second year round, I actually used the same thematic priorities as my first year. So in both 2024 and 2025, I ran off living, expenses and student experience, which also formed quite a nice acronym of my name.
Of course.
And it was kind of looking at like what it holistically does mean to be a student and the different elements within that. So I don't think I ran off a specific campaign, it was more a selection of different bullet points which I'd identified as priorities based off like my own experience and then also using some of the SU's research. So right from the get-go I was involved with like all the research and insight teamwork that we have at the SU. So fast forward to now, I've kind of never really swayed from that. They're still my three broad thematic areas. But I think the current priorities right now as we're filming in December is all around the Fallowfield residences and like what we're actually doing there, how we're building accommodation and the affordability levels in particular. And then the second thing is actually, so as part of my role, I'm not just the Union Affairs Officer, I'm also a trustee and the chair of the trustee board. So at the moment we're looking at organisation and whether we've got the right skills, the right leadership, the right remits and responsibilities there. But all of that is quite confidential and sensitive work which I can't actually talk about. So that's my big priority right now, like particularly up until Christmas. And then beyond that, so we've just opened our Essentials Centre, which I'm not sure how many students know about it, but it's essentially looking at like the holistic student support model we can provide for students. So anything from housing to basic needs, wellbeing, mental health support, food pantries, anything that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. We basically want to meet your needs there. That was a pun as well. We want to meet your needs there and like help you kind of develop yourself and like reach self-actualization. So I think beyond January onwards, we'll be really looking at how that service develops and making sure that students can't just go to the centre to get what they need, but they also find the community and resources there. So that's a really key priority, both for me and for the rest of the officer team.
So with the Essential Centre, building a service where students not only can go for physical goods, but also more holistic support.
Yeah, agreed, but we don't want it to just be a service. Like, we don't want there to be any type of stigma or any type of like, oh, I need to have this particular demographic or this background or to meet this type of means testing. We want all students to be able to access it. And that's where it moves slightly from being just a service to more of a community support model, where students can find, you know, their friends, their course mates, other people similar shared interests, and then eventually like do more community outreach as well, like within the local area. Because I think one thing which is really high on like most people's agendas at the moment is we are a university obviously located in Oxford Road, but around us we've actually got quite deprived areas. So we need to make sure that we're reaching out to those communities so that we don't exist as a bit of a white elephant or a standalone item.
Of course. Speaking of community, the second question that we have is how does the Manchester student community benefit from the work of the Students' Union? Obviously you've already touched on the Essentials Centre, but perhaps is there other bits of your work, either this year or last year, that you've done that really show how the Students' Union is a benefit to students at the University of Manchester?
Yeah, well I think the big thing, the big way in which students benefit is the actual the actual existence of the Students' Union itself. And a lot of that is funded through the block grant, which we receive from the university. And to exist, we need to have that funding in place. And the funding is negotiated with the university every 3 years by me and the chief executive of the SU. And this year we secured £3.1 million, which is obviously really good because all that money goes directly into student services. You know, that directly goes into how expensive your coffee is at Corridor Coffee, how you interact with the advice centre, how you interact with the physical building itself and all four levels of it. So I think that's one way in which students benefit. The other really large piece of work from last year was about accommodation. So while we're building new residences, I've always argued and will continue to argue that they need to be affordable to students. And at the moment, I don't think they are, and I've always made the university very clear that I just don't believe that they are affordable. So to mitigate against that, we've increased the amount of accommodation bursaries. So now the university is putting, I believe, £1.7 million into these accommodation bursaries for 200 students to be able to access. And we're now looking at whether we can expand that criteria so like students whose household income is under £50,000 will be able to access those bursaries. Because what we're seeing is students who typically have household income about 30k or under get quite a load of student support, like from maintenance loans, the government, from the university, the Manchester Access Bursary. But if you're slightly beyond that and under 50k, you don't receive that support. You know, you're more likely to get a maintenance loan of about £6,000 a year, which isn't enough, and you don't qualify for other bits of support. So we're now looking like the next demographic up so that no students slip through the net.
Is there any other ways that students can get involved with the consultation for the process for the Fallowfield redevelopment? Obviously, construction has just started, or is in the process of beginning.
In the process,
In the process of beginning, but is there any other ways that students can make sure their voices are heard?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things is that kind of what the site will look like and what it will deliver has been secure. Like everyone involved in the project team has like quite a clear framework around that. But we're now working out what exactly will be inside those different areas of the site. So one of the big things is a central amenity hub, which is essentially going to be a second students' union, but for the Fallowfield campus. And we want to make sure that like we're meeting students' needs there. So while I'm really involved in all the consultations, obviously I can't be doing that alone because I represent 48,000 students, and
you're just one person.
They're not homogenous. Yeah, like students are not homogenous. They can't be like put into one group with the same need. You know, within that you'll have loads of different intersections and identities. So one thing that we're now going to be organising is doing student workshops and focus groups for the Central Amenity Hub specifically. So like whether we need certain facilities for those who are religious or faith observing can use, or whether we need more music practice rooms, given that we have loads of students using space in the SU and the Martin Harris Centre, but actually they're always bursting at the seams. So that's going to be another round of student consultation. But beyond that, I think accommodation is one of the very first things that students interact with when they come to university. You know, chances are you will arrive on the campus and go straight to your accommodation to pick up your key. So it's your first impression, it's the place that you live, it's your safety net, it's where you sleep every night. So if there's stuff that you don't like about it, let the uni know. You know, we have the halls rep system where students can like be representatives for their own halls. And then we obviously have the exec officers, and you can tell us what is working, what isn't working, and we can try and correct it where needed. And like we always want to work with students to be able to do that, given that we represent them. And
touching on that as my final question, I know over the past few years, visibility of the student union executive officers has historically been an issue.
Yeah,
and
I've been trying to fix that.
Yeah, you're quite active on Instagram, and obviously your relationship with Duncan is quite visible. How do you think that's gone in terms of this year and last year, and improving your visibility and physical presence on campus?
Yeah, well, I think it was my priority, so I campaigned off it in 2024 under the student experience section. So I really wanted to close the gap between students and senior leadership in particular. And I think that has gone quite well, which is good. I think one of the real benefits was having Duncan Iverson, who's the President Vice Chancellor, start at the same time as I did.
Of course,
so we were experiencing the exact same things together, which was really interesting. Like we had our first finance committee on the third day in the job, which was nuts. You know, it's 5 hours of just really dense financial statements and papers and that type of thing. And I think our relationship has always been very open and transparent, and there's stuff that he pushes me on and wants me to do more on, and there's stuff that I push him on, say you need to do more on that, you need to work with your senior leadership team in the same way that I work with my student leadership team. So I think that relationship has really built over time, and we're now in a very solid place. But it's not just about Duncan. You know, he also has his own senior executive team, which he now has reformed into university executive. So I work really closely with all 8 of them on the different areas and priorities. And one of those ways is through like the Manchester Matters series. So that's through like our open meetings and Oxford chats, one of which I filmed yesterday about the financial statements. And my argument there was the university has a surplus of £84 million this year. How is that going back into students' lives and students' pockets? You know, how are you going to invest in students? So yeah, I'm always pushing them, they're always pushing me, and it's productive, and I think it is very different to how other officers across the sector experience their relationship with the uni. So it's something I'm very aware of.
Thanks so much for chatting with us.
Oh, no bother.